If you were a kid in the late 1980s, there was so much going on. On TV, you had things like DuckTales, Ghostbusters, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Home video was starting to take over America. More and more things like Star Wars being re-released. You could watch Indiana Jones at home. And of course, play was changing with things like the original Nintendo Entertainment System becoming more and more common, more and more families getting one of these things. And that's all just stuff you could do at home. In the movies, things were really kicking off. In 1989 alone, you had The Wizard, you had The Little Mermaid, Bill and Ted, The Karate Kid Part 3, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Ghostbusters 2, Back to the Future 2, Uncle Buck, Lethal Weapon 2, and even Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, all in 1989. But there was one movie that not only dominated the box office, but dominated the thoughts, the imaginations of every kid on the playground. I'm talking about 1989's Batman. I'm talking about that original, epic Tim Burton Batman starring Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson as the Joker. This was a movie unlike anything audiences had ever seen before. This wasn't your father's 1966 Adam West Batman. No, this was something dark, something gritty, something sort of otherworldly, and it proved to be a sensational smash at the box office. Even with all those other amazing features in the theater that year, Batman was the top grossing film of 1989, and the phenomenon wasn't contained just in the movie theaters. A true wave of Batmania swept the world. Batman seemed to be everywhere. On every store shelf, there was Batman candy, there were Batman trading cards, clock radios, coffee mugs, look at those. There were cereal boxes. Batman cereal was everywhere. There were Batman books, Batman phones. Hello? There were Batman magazines of every size, shape, and description. There were catalogs. There were auto accessories like air fresheners and auto sunshades for your car, you know, keep the sun off the steering wheel. You know what I'm talking about? There were Batman movie tie-in comic books. There were remote control cars, die-cast cars, hats and clothing of all kinds. There were video games and movie tie-in novels. But most importantly, there was home video. In an unprecedented move, Warner Brothers released Batman on VHS not months and months and months after the theatrical release, but in the same calendar year, making Batman not just a hit in the theaters, but a blockbuster at home as well. But of all this stuff, calendars, posters, candy, cassette tapes, of all of those things, the most exciting thing to me were the toys. The wonderful toys!
Where does it get those wonderful toys?
In 1989, upstart brand new toy company Toy Biz came out with the official movie tie-in Batman action figures. In the world of kiddom back there, this was very exciting. Every advertisement in the newspaper for toy stores, every commercial break during your morning cartoons advertised the newest, coolest, most exciting line of toys for kids. Batman, the action figure, was back. Now, I did a video a few years back focusing on my 1989 Batman collection, mainly focusing on the Toy Biz history. And I told you guys the story of how these Batman figures blew my mind. And of course, how the toy shelves looked nothing like this at my local Target when we went in. The only figure they had available was Robin here. So my mother, glorious saint of a woman that she is, and keep in mind there was not a lot of money to go around in my family, in 1989, bought me a Batmobile and the Robin figure, and my obsession with getting Batman had begun. She looked everywhere for Batman. She got rain checks everywhere. She checked the ads, went to different stores for me, and eventually came home with the prized possession of my life at that time, the Toy Biz Batman action figure. Now, technically, Robin wasn't a part of the Batman movie action figures, because don't forget, Robin wasn't even in the movie. So technically, there were only 3. You had Batman with his little pulley-outy belt rope, the Joker who had a little squirty device he could put in his back and he could squirt water out of his little flower, and his friend, Bob the Joker's goon. Luckily, Toy Biz didn't just have the rights to Batman the movie, they had the rights to all kinds of DC comic characters, and so soon the store shelves began filling up with other villains for Batman to fight, and of course Robin to hang out with him. You had figures like the Riddler, the Flash, Superman that came along and hit store shelves. The only problem is that they were often really difficult to find, but certainly by Christmas 1989, thanks to the dedication of my parents, we had things like the Batwing over here. We found things like the Bat Cycle in a Walden Books of all places. But it was a problem not just at my local stores, but everywhere. The Toy Biz figures, if popular, were very hard to find. There were even major news stories at the time. Newspapers would go and interview executives at Toy Biz and go, "Where are these toys? We're trying to increase capacity." But it wasn't just the availability of the toys that was sort of subject to question. It was also the quality. Famously, Toy Biz's line of Batman and DC superheroes figures were pretty much knockoffs of an earlier line of figures, the Superpowers line of figures. In fact, on the Batman packaging and in the advertising, it's just a repainted early Kenner Superpowers Batman figure, painted to look like the movie, who is standing in here for what would become the Toy Biz figure. There were multiple different Batman head sculpts. They could never quite get the look right. I mean, just take one example. The Toy Biz Robin here, the one from 1989, is pretty much a carbon copy of the earlier Kenner Robin action figure, with the addition of a button so that he could karate chop. And although the Toy Biz figures were creative in their action features, like Two-Face here, who could rotate his coin, very exciting. Or the Lex Luthor figure, who could famously punch himself in the head. Look at him punching himself in his bald head. It all sort of added up to a inferior product quality that certainly I didn't notice as a kid, but my parents did, and in hindsight, yeah, the Toy Biz toys were a little cheap, which makes the bootleg versions of the toys hilarious. Just look at this Batman and Robin here next to their 1989 Mexican counterparts. Ooh, Fiesta Hoy! Now, as a kid in 1989, I obviously didn't care about the sort of substandard quality of the Toy Biz action figures. I loved these figures. I even took one to school with me, and this kid who really liked Vanilla Ice stole it. I've never gotten over it. But the thing that did annoy me as a kid was that weird shortage, the availability, the distribution. It was all Heimbucht. You couldn't find Batman figures anywhere. And it wasn't just us kids that noticed. The people at DC Comics were taking notice as well, both of the quality and, more importantly, of that availability. And that is why the Toy Biz line was doomed to only last 1 year. They would lose their DC Comics license. They would lose the Batman license right at the height of Batmania. But don't worry, even though the Toy Biz items started disappearing from store shelves, there was another contender waiting in the wings. Another company, some say a superior company, Kenner Toys. And in 1990, they would put a whole new spin on their Batman action figure line, one that would change Batman toys and superhero toys forever. Behold, the Dark Knight Collection. Kenner's 1990 reclaiming of the Batman action figure mantle. When I first walked into Toy City on Lincoln Avenue in Anaheim, California in 1990 and saw the Dark Knight Collection figures, I was blown away. Everything from the packaging to the character design was so much darker, so much more realistic feeling. I mean, gone were the goofy faces of Toy Biz. Now we had a Batman that really looked like Michael Keaton, and Michael Keaton's Batman was there right on the package itself. This was a whole new world of Batman collecting, not least because whereas Toy Biz, you could never find the actual Batman figure, with the new Kenner line, that was never a problem because the Dark Knight Collection was almost nothing but Batman. Multiple kinds of Batman, because going backwards for a second, looking at that character design, the better sculpt, the more realistic detail, the much more Michael Keaton looking and tough and dark looking visage of Batman, that was one impressive feat. But it wasn't the most impressive feat. The most impressive thing, and the thing that would change Batman toys forever, was this. One mold for Batman with very few alterations created many characters, and for the first time ever, in Tech Shield Batman, different color Batmans. Kenner very wisely took a look at the marketplace, took a look at the distribution problems with the Toy Biz series, noticed that, you know, the main character that kids want to play with, Batman, is always missing from the toy store shelves. They made sure that this problem would never happen again, because aside from our one villain, a Joker figure that actually looks like Jack Nicholson now, but we'll get to that in a minute, there were no other characters. The entire line was pretty much Batman, coming with a variety of different accessories and in a variety of different colors. In Wave 1, we got Wall Scaler Batman, Tech Shield Batman, Shadow Wing Batman with pop-out arms so he could pop his cape up like he does in the film, Iron Winch Batman, which was really awesome because he was sort of the colors of the comic book Batman while remaining still the kind of dark and gritty Tim Burton Batman character, and even a quick change Bruce Wayne action figure. So now you could actually have Bruce Wayne, and with all this little plastic armor, he could transform himself into Batman once he saw the bat signal, of course, and go after the Joker. This truly was Batman like you've never seen him before. And most popular of all, the classic crime attack Batman. But let's not forget, we also had our one villain, which was Sky Escape Joker. Not only did he come with this nifty little helicopter accessory so he could, you know, try to escape from Batman's clutches, but if you dipped his face in ice water, it would change color to a more just human flesh tone, so he could sort of be in disguise. Couldn't do anything about that hair, though. He was more like Jack Napier if you did this, and then he'd return after a little while in another temperature change, hot water maybe, back to the Joker we all know and love. This was awesome because finally Jack Nicholson's likeness was on something, although it's weird because it's sort of an airbrush painting instead of more of a photo like Michael Keaton, but the figure actually kind of looked like Jack Nicholson as well. And I'm telling you right now, to a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old or whatever I was, this felt like a big change. Not just a big change, but this felt darker. Like the Toy Biz was like, oh, that's kiddie stuff. This is the new thing. And that was just Wave 1, because the Batman just kept on coming. Because with Wave 2, we got Thunder Whip Batman with that weird arm that could whip around a weird accessory. Mostly the same as the other Batman, but, you know, a little different. And Power Wing Batman with his cool, like, Batwing looking thing. He could fly through the air. He was that classic black color. It is probably my favorite figure in the line, maybe. I mean, just look at that. And mostly because this was so hard to find. I spent about 5 years looking for one of these. It took me a while, but we'll get back to that. Last but not least, we did get one more villain. One more villain in the Dark Knight Collection series. But, of course, it was another Joker. It was Knockout Joker, and he is a real knockout of a figure. I've got mine in this plastic case for a very good reason, and that is Knockout Joker, along with Power Wing Batman, is one of the hardest figures to find in the whole line, and that's because, like I said, this was Wave 2, Series 2 of the Dark Knight Collection. And since the first wave came out in 1990, Series 2 came out in 1991, right up against the release of Batman Returns. So pretty soon everything was tooled over to that, and but we'll get there. So for those of you counting at home, that is 8 different Batman action figures we got in the line. But if that wasn't enough for you, just wait, there's more! Because in addition to the standard carded figures, we also got 3 deluxe figures in the line. Claw Climber Batman, Night Glider Batman, and Blast Shield Batman. You couldn't find these just anywhere. In fact, I remember only ever seeing them at Toys R Us. They were basically your standard Batman figure in a little bit of a different color configuration. This one's dark gray, the other ones have different hues as well. And he'd come with a larger accessory than your standard figure. It was basically just an excuse to upsell you the same Batman figure you were already buying. But there was an important new thing with the Dark Knight Collection, something that really struck me and really made an impact on me the first time that I saw these figures. And that is a couple of small but very important words on the back of the packaging. The 3 words, collect them all. It wasn't just the Dark Knight series. This was the Dark Knight Collection, and it's the first time it ever entered into my consciousness that you could have a collection of anything. Words that clearly made a big impact on me here, you know, many decades later. Now, I never actually owned any of the deluxe figures as a kid. Like I said, they weren't available for sale everywhere, and my dad very wisely was like, you sure you want to spend your money on those and just get the regular Batman figure and you could use your other money for a vehicle? And my friends, there were vehicles aplenty. Just like the Toy Biz line had, the Kenner Dark Knight collection included a Batmobile. This time the Batmobile was a little sleeker. It had the closed canopy on top. It could only seat one figure, but man, that profile was lean and mean. I mean, that thing looked like it popped right out of the movie screen. They also had a new and improved version of the Batwing, this time known as the Turbojet Batwing. This time with, as you can see, much more realistic, screen-accurate details here, and most importantly, machine guns in the front, a little more violent, which actually reminds me to say that the Dark Knight collection Batmobile also had flip-up machine guns instead of the corny yellow missiles of the Toy Biz version, and where the Toy Biz version of the Batwing had these little red suction cups, like the kind you'd shoot out of a cheesy dime store dart gun kind of a deal. The Dark Knight collection Batwing also came with some firepower in the form of these very nefarious looking missiles on top here that were detachable fenders for narrow garages. The canopy for the cockpit was a lot darker. The whole thing looked mean and sleek and kind of cool. Unfortunately, it was missing one really awesome play feature from the Toy Biz version of the toy, which was the scissors in the nose, these ones right here, which were operated in this little stock here by this trigger, and you could hold this and kind of fly the Batwing in front of you through the hallway. It gave you something to hold on to, you know? That was missing now from the new version of the Batwing, but almost as if to make up for that fact, you could transform this Batwing by pulling off its Batwings, and then look at that, wheels would pop out, turning your aircraft into a street racer, as the box said. To be honest, to me, especially as a kid, these wheels seemed completely unnecessary, and I never actually had this version of the toy as a kid. I kept my Toy Biz version all throughout my childhood, and I'm kind of glad because I don't really need this. But now as an adult, I do appreciate the much more detailed look. It's just, these wheels are sort of unnecessary. Anyway, moving on now, we also got a Joker cycle and a Bat cycle, each character getting their own motorcycle to cause mayhem or to save the day, depending. And we also got the Bat Copter, which was an all-black sort of re-release of an earlier Superpowers vehicle, the Batcopter of the early 80s. The Bat Jet, which never appeared in a cartoon, a comic, or in the movies, and we'll get to why that is in a little bit. And two other moderately priced mini vehicles, the Batman Bola Bullet and Strike Wing. Look at those. Now, if Batman didn't need a big enough Batcave already to store all those vehicles, there was one more. At the very end of Series 2, they released Batman's Skyblade vehicle, which I'll show you in just a second. But it wasn't just figures. It wasn't just vehicles. Kenner also had some playware, some armor, some role-play equipment to go with it. Everyone knows Batman doesn't use guns, but you know what Batman does use? A sonic neutralizer. And apparently, although bullets aren't his thing, crossbow bolts are just fine because we got the Dark Knight Collection crossbow. Then, just to make things even weirder, we got the crime control set where you could get Batman's utility belt with some accessories and a freeze ray gun. So even though Batman's whole thing is not using guns in the comic books, obviously in the Keaton movie, he kills people and blows them up, and apparently that made it okay to bring out the toy guns in force for Batman. And one should remember that unlike today, back in the 80s, there were whole toy aisles of toy guns, toy machine guns. They looked very realistic. My parents would never let us own toy guns. It was like a thing. They didn't want us to run out on the street and accidentally get boomed by the police thinking it was a real gun or something like that. But all of our friends and cousins and everybody else had the realistic fake guns, so we ended up playing with them all the time as well, which seems crazy today, but it was a very common thing, trust me, children. So Batman having a load of guns was just par for the course. The crime control set also includes a walkie-talkie, a quote-unquote microphone, and binoculars that could combine into a giant crime control weapon. But that wasn't the only role-play kit we got, because we got one more left. The ultimate Batman role-play item, the one whose box art might give you nightmares, be warned. The Batman armor set. Look at that kid's face. This one came with a mask. I wanted this one desperately as a kid. I never got it. I did have a Batman costume of my own, but it was far different looking. See, like I mentioned earlier, in my family at that time, money wasn't exactly growing on trees. So this fancy plastic armor set and the crime control set, they were a pretty penny. They were low down on the shelf, if you know what I mean. The bigger, more deluxe items. Add to that they sort of had, my parents sort of had a taboo on wearing masks with costumes and stuff like that, and these were starting to disappear from store shelves by the time they finally relented and I got my Batman costume, which, let me tell you, looked nothing like this armor set, nor did it look like the vinyl or latex masks that were around at costume shops. My Batman costume was sort of an all-fabric hood with kind of a mask sewn on and these little ears. I think it came from a craft store of all places. They didn't sell it in Target or in Halloween stores. It came from some weird, unusual place. It almost looked like a bootleg item. I wore that thing all the time. I wore it as I got bigger and bigger, and it looked funkier and funkier on me. I loved that costume, and combine that with my glow-in-the-dark Batman logo sweater, I really felt like Batman running around in the carport, hanging out in the neighborhood. I may not have looked like the kid on the box over here with the official roleplay stuff, but I still felt like Batman. I still felt like Batman. Now, I have looked for years, and I thought I would never find one of those costumes. In fact, I still haven't found one of those costumes. But what I did find is a photo of one of those costumes right here. Take a look at this. Now, this kid is much smaller than I was in that same costume, but there's the hood, there's the mask, kind of a cheesy, corny thing. It was very similar to this, if not exactly the same. Now picture this kid getting twice as big and still wearing it, and you'll have some idea of how silly I looked. But like I said, I felt like Batman, and that is awesome. Now, jumping back to vehicles for a second, I want to say what was awesome about 1980s into 1990s now toy lines was the range of different vehicles, right? You had your big deluxe vehicles like the turbojet Batwing and the Batmobile, and you had your mid-range vehicles like the Bullet or the Skyblade that we're going to talk about in a second, and then you had your small vehicles like the Bat Cycle or the Joker Cycle, things that were only $5, $7. They weren't much more expensive than just your standard figure, so they were affordable for kids like me who didn't have a lot of money, right? You could do some chores and try and scrounge up change. Couldn't get another Batmobile, but maybe you could get a Joker Cycle. You know what I'm saying? I didn't have all these as a kid, but I desperately wished, looking at the back of that package, that I could collect them all, that I could complete the Dark Knight collection. And now, sitting here with all of the figures, all of the deluxe figures, and all of the mid-range small and large vehicles here in the house, as well as the role-play sets, what you're looking at behind me is a complete Dark Knight collection. Almost. We've got the complete collection of figures, and minus the Batjet, which I cannot find but is in the garage somewhere, the complete collection of vehicles and role-play equipment, with just one exception, the Batman Skyblade vehicle. Now, you'll remember I said that vehicle came along in Series 2, and Series 2 was so close to the release of the next Batman movie, Batman Returns, that they had a lot of leftover toys from the Dark Knight collection that they simply repackaged in Batman Returns packaging, same exact toy right here, to give them a little bit longer of a shelf life, because you would want the old Batman movie Batmobile if the new Batman Returns movie was coming out. Well, the Skyblade vehicle came so late in Series 2 and so close to the release of Batman Returns that hardly any of them were released in the Dark Knight collection box. In fact, I have never personally seen one in real life in a Dark Knight collection box, except for one time I came across one that was a Canadian version, so it had English and French on the package, and I thought, nah, that's not going to fit into my collection. I passed on it. I have regretted it ever since. I spent the last 5 or 6 years, however long it's been since I did that last Toy Biz collection video all about Batman stuff, hunting down this vehicle in the correct Dark Knight collection box. Can't find it, couldn't find it, can't find it anywhere. And so even though I've never dipped into collecting Batman Returns, I had to give in and buy this one item so that at least the toy inside would complete my Dark Knight collection. So that is the one and only piece that I am missing. I almost have the complete collection. So bear in mind that this was manufactured at the same time on the same belts, everything, only the box is different. And if you give me a little grace, then we are looking at a complete Dark Knight collection. But of course, if any of you guys have this out there in the correct box, and are willing to trade it or sell it to me, please let me know, because I'd like to have a complete collection with no asterisk on it, you know? Now, I don't have words enough sitting here now and looking at all this old school Batman stuff to express to the people of today who didn't live through it how insane Batmania was at that time, because it wasn't just summer 1989 or winter 1989. It lasted all through 1990, and the proof of that is that the Dark Knight collection didn't come out till 1990 and sold like gangbusters. All these Batmans were flying off the pegs in the stores, and then Batman Returns came right after that, like a 1-2 punch, and then there was a whole huge line of Batman Returns toys featuring that same exact sculpt of Batman in even more ridiculous colors. We got an Arctic Batman and a scuba Batman. We got all kinds of Batman in ever more ridiculous, honestly, colors, ever brighter, ever crazier. We got Catwoman, we got a Robin figure, we got the Penguin, but that's all for a future video of a future collection that I don't currently own, because as much as I love Batman Returns, it was the 1989 original Batman movie that was the knockout, really nostalgic video of my childhood. And I will forever love the Toy Biz version of Batman. I have nowhere near a complete collection of the Toy Biz stuff. I particularly loved the packaging of this stuff. They were the first sort of series of toys, other than Ninja Turtles, that really blew me away, and it was the first time that packaging ever blew me away. Somehow that uniform packaging across the whole thing, it really inspired me to learn about packaging design later, become a graphic designer. That led me into video editing stuff, and so my whole life sort of, I feel like, started with getting my first Toy Biz Batman toys. Having said that though, because they made so many Toy Biz Batman toys and they were so late arriving to the shelves, they ended up on a lot of clearance racks around the same time that the Dark Knight collection was coming out. And as a result, most of the Toy Biz line has never been rare. It's still surprisingly affordable to collect, easy to find. It's even easy to find the big Batcave. You're gonna pay a little bit more for it now than you would have even 2 or 3 years ago. But trust me when I say from experience, the Dark Knight collection is much harder to complete. It's much harder to find every figure, particularly if you're going to collect mint figures and mint packages, you know, perfect, uncreased, undamaged boxes and sealed items and all that kind of stuff. It can be very difficult to piece together a collection. You'll have noticed that mine is all kinds of dinged up and creased and folded, and that's because I don't have a lot of money. I didn't want to go spend a lot of money. Now behind me you see all these crazy things and you think, whoa, that's a big collection, must have been a big spender. But I acquired each piece of this one at a time, trying to find the best bargain, trying to find the best deal. That's why a lot of my pieces have water damage on the boxes or creases or sort of stuff like that. I made a lot of compromises for the sake of completing it. But at least I did go for in-package, even if they're not all sealed, some of them. Even still, some of the items in the Dark Knight collection now in 2022 are going for insane money compared to what they used to go for. It is almost impossible to find one of these things for under $600 or $700 with any kind of box, sometimes even without the box. And that's what really motivated me to complete my Dark Knight collection as soon as possible. So for the last 5 years, I've been looking in every nook and cranny, trying to complete them, get all the figures, because I kept watching the prices go up and up and up into ranges I couldn't afford or wasn't willing to pay. And so luckily I feel like Indiana Jones, just right under the wire, grabbed the hat. I got out of there with the collection, so whew. Now you might think it'd be boring for a 7 or 8 year old kid to play with different colored Batmans, you know, and that would be about all, but it totally wasn't. Batman had adventures with every other kind of action figure I ever possessed, including Ninja Turtles, X-Men, whoever was around, Batman would interact with. And of course I wanted to have all the colors because I wanted Batman to be able to change his suit for various tasks and reasons. And even though in the modern day we have much more realistic, stylized, almost, you know, movie picture perfect versions of the Dark Knight of Michael Keaton's era, like this giant NECA statue here, I had a heck of a lot of fun with my Batman figures from that era, both Toy Biz and the Dark Knight collection. And of course, when we exchanged Batman for Batman Returns, I got a bunch of Batman Returns figures as well, including the new Batman Returns Batmobile, the Bat-Missile Batmobile that broke apart into multiple pieces. That was a great toy, but for my money, it could just not beat the original styling, how good the Dark Knight collection Batmobile looked. And sadly, by the time that I had my Bat-Missile Batmobile for a while, I no longer had my original Dark Knight collection Batmobile, and I always would look at the toy shelves and wish that I could just get one more chance to get that Batmobile that I loved so much back. Because you see, the version of the Dark Knight collection Batmobile in the Batman Returns box that I showed you earlier was only available at the very beginning of the Batman Returns line and in very limited numbers. I never saw one of these in the flesh in toy stores. And by the time you were getting to the end of the Batman Returns line, when I was saddled with only my Batmissile Batmobile, we were already seeing the introduction of the Batman the Animated Series action figures and a whole new wave of vehicles and accessories stylized to the Batman Animated Series, starring the late, great Kevin Conroy, may he rest in peace. There was no going back after the animated series. There was no getting the old Keaton Batmobile ever again, until weirdly, Kenner gave us one more opportunity in a Series 2 of the Batman Returns figures. They released this, the Camo Attack Batmobile. Apparently, they still had a couple of those classic Dark Knight Collection 1989 Batmobiles laying around in the factory, and now to help them move out the door faster, they spray painted some kind of strange camouflage color only on the top of them, so you could tell they were already made in the factory before that, and included a free camo Batman figure. Ooh! Now I looked at this at the Toys R Us over on Harbor Boulevard, right by Disneyland, and I stared at this thing for a long time. This is 1993 now, and I'm going, I really loved this Batmobile. I really want another one. But I don't know if I want a camo one. And this was already on clearance by then. So sadly, even though it was only 15 bucks or something like that, I left it behind. And never saw another one again. Not for at least 25 years before finally, some kind soul online decided to part with theirs. And one day, while trolling eBay, I found this thing. And I don't know if I'll ever let it go. It's a funky, weird footnote in Batman history, and it's really part of the Dark Knight collection. And I'm very pleased to have gotten one of these, because they're kind of hard to find. Well, of course, when I say hard to find, I mean hard to find for an affordable price and at a moment's notice. I mean, not impossible to find. They're not the Amber Room or anything like that. Now, many people have made much of the fact that Kenner recycled a lot into their Dark Knight collection. And you got to remember that in 1989, Toy Biz had the license, and Kenner had to tool up Batman really quick to take over the license in 1990. And that meant that the Batjet that we were talking about earlier was actually a repurposed Silverhawks vehicle. In fact, a lot of the Batman figures in the Dark Knight collection had repurposed Silverhawks accessories. And if I'm not mistaken, even the iconic Tech Shield Batman's little backpack accessory here originally was a Silverhawks accessory. Sort of just a slightly retooled old school Superpowers body. They've got those reused accessories, and they even simplified the design because, of course, they took away the knee joints of the old Superpowers and Toy Biz versions of the toy. They kept everything simple, and of course reused the actual Batman mold to create all those different color Batmans. They did a lot of cost cutting, a little bit of corner cutting, but all that considered, to me it's even more astounding the quality level that they reached on these toys. I look at them now as an adult and I think, wow, these were some really nice toys. But believe me, as a kid, it felt even nicer. These felt like luxury, deluxe, amazing collectibles at a time where I was playing with toys and tearing them apart, not yet collecting them, of course. I had never had any Silverhawk stuff. I didn't know that they were recycling things. Well, with one exception, because even I, who was born just as Kenner was wrapping up their Star Wars series of toys, thought the Sonic Neutralizer looked awfully familiar. And that is because Kenner simply took the molds for one of these, the old school original Star Wars blaster rifle, and basically straight used it for Batman, this time with the inclusion of that orange suction cup Batman logo on the front to make it a Sonic Neutralizer instead of just a make you not alive neutralizer. It's pretty much one of the most iconic weapons in cinema history, so I think with this one they weren't really fooling anyone. And I've got this vintage example here that somebody repainted for a Halloween costume or something like that. And look at it, it is one-to-one identical. Same mold, same everything, just with the text up here, the copyright text changed from, you know, Kenner Star Wars to just plain old Kenner Batman style status. New school. Now, I already mentioned to you before that the Batcopter was basically a straight re-release of the Superpowers Batcopter, but this time just in all black. A lot of Batman collectors obviously caught on to that one, but what a lot of people didn't realize is that the Joker cycle and Bat cycle from the line were also recycled from Kenner's RoboCop line of toys, which is why neither the Joker or Batman sits very comfortably on either of their motorcycles. Both of these boxes are sealed, or I'd open them up and show you, but they are pretty much straight taken from the RoboCop molds with the addition of this little rubber hood on the top of the motorcycle to make it look more Bat-ish, and of course, a giant Joker head that snaps into the front of this other chopper over here to make it look Jokery? Listen, I love old school Toy Biz and Kenner Batman toys, but I gotta say, not only back then, but even today, they're pretty uncreative toy designers when it comes to Joker's vehicles. It's like they'll take any old vehicle and just slap Joker's head on it, as if Joker just needed his face on stuff. It's pretty strange. I have to tell you, I love action figures and toys of all sizes, shapes, and descriptions, all different kinds of lines. Even to this day, I like to walk in the toy aisles and see what's going on there. That's how much fun I had with my action figures growing up. They were sort of my only friends. Not gonna lie. And it always seemed strange to me that, in particular, the Dark Knight collection and the Batman Returns collection, for that matter, are sort of not really revered by collectors. You don't hear a lot of collectors talking about them. You don't see a lot of stuff on the internet about it. But for me, it was my absolute, bar none, favorite line of toys growing up. I liked other stuff. I liked Ninja Turtles. I liked X-Men. I liked all kinds of different things. But far and away, the Toy Biz and Kenner Batman movie toys were my absolute favorite thing of all time, and I really appreciate you stopping by so that I could share this collection that I've amassed with you. It continues to grow, but only very slowly as I find various 89 things for an affordable price, you know, that kind of thing. It's gotta be vintage. And to be honest with you, if I hadn't seen the prices going up like crazy for the Dark Knight collection, I mean, year after year, I wouldn't have tried to acquire it all before it got out of control the way that I did. I probably wouldn't even have this much. But anyway, even though I've completed the collection, I still find myself looking up different Dark Knight collection information or different Toy Biz information online. And one of the main mysteries, so-called, that seems to be bandied about is a lot of speculation as to why did Toy Biz lose the license? Now, I have looked for 20 years for a way to get in contact with people who worked for Toy Biz at that time. I have still been unsuccessful. I found two in the last 5 years. Neither one of them wanted to talk or give me any information whatsoever. Actually, I found a third who didn't answer me at all. So unless maybe the Toys That Made Us or some other kind of documentary or some big player goes out and finds some of these people, we might never know for sure. But to me, it's not really a mystery why they lost the license. For one thing, there are newspaper accounts basically straight up saying that Toy Biz lost the license when Kenner acquired it because they could not meet retailers' demands. Actually, there's newspaper articles from 1989 about frustrated retailers not being able to get enough Batman stock in, and it even has quotes from, comments from people that worked at Toy Biz saying, we're gonna get more, we're gonna do better, all that kind of stuff. Also mystery solved because look at this old newspaper article right here. You can see that Kenner bought the rights from Toy Biz. They probably figured correctly they could make a lot more money with their bigger operation. Oh, and if you were worried about what happened to Toy Biz after, don't worry. They came up with the X-Men line of figures and later merged with Marvel. But it would be nice to find some Toy Biz employees who worked on that early line, or even some Kenner employees who worked on the Dark Knight collection just to talk about all that stuff. I have tried, my friends. I have tried, I promise you, for years to get in touch with them. No one's interested in talking with little old me, so I guess we'll have to wait for the Nacelle Company or somebody to drag out the old Toy Biz and Kenner employees and get the full scoop. But anyways, I've waited for 5 years. I've slowly acquired things since that last Toy Biz 1989 Batman collection video that I did for you, acquiring bits and pieces of this collection so that I could move from the Toy Biz era into the Kenner Dark Knight era and share my passion with this very nerdy, somewhat obscure stuff with you guys here in 2022. I must say, I loved the Christopher Nolan Batman movies. I really enjoyed the new Batman movie that just came out. I wasn't a Batfleck fan, but that's okay. You know, different strokes for different folks. I do like the direction they're going in now, so I do enjoy other Batman movies, but for me, the Michael Keaton, Tim Burton Batman movie, it just might be stylistically, ambiance-wise, atmospherically, the greatest of all time. The greatest of all time.
Now, my friends, I'd love to keep on talking Batman with you all day long, but I think this particular conversation has run its course. We've gone on a little long. In the future, I'd love to get into some of the fast food toys, the McDonald's stuff, the Batman tortilla chips, the various import figures and bootleg figures that I've managed to get my hands on, some of which are almost comically hysterical, to be honest with you. But for the moment, that's all we have time for. I will see you guys on Patreon with podcasts and special videos. I will see you on this channel. I'll see you on the other channel, the vlog channel. We got a lot going on. The link's down in the description. There's new merch. There's all kinds of stuff going on. But for now, we've done our duty. It's time to go home and sleep well.
Batman's hungry.